I'm Angelica Contos. I'm a strategic portfolio leader. I've spent a lot of time in strategic program delivery, operational transformation projects, cultural transformation projects in organizations spanning quite a few industries and organizations. I've recently joined and partnered with Brightside Success. I love what they stand for, the positive side of actually meeting those goals.
Yeah. Thank you, Angelica, for kicking it off. Hi, everyone. My name is Abhishek Deshpande. I've been in the telecom industry here over a decade now, and I've been working with tier 1 and tier 2 operators here in US. I have hands-on experience deploying 4G, 5G, and then the latest 5G advanced technologies, etc., including of Personal Tiger LLC, where I support private equity firms, investors, and operators and advise them on technical side of things in terms of commercialization, getting things rolled out in market and time to market, etc. Your scenarios that you've been where you walk into an executive level approval and then you have great ideas, but how do you get those ideas on the table so that they could approve and then they could approve in a quickly manner, because you don't want a lot of back and forth and multiple meetings and few weeks or etc. to reschedule all of these, right? So you got to go there with solutions to those problems, and that's the typical approach. But today, what you will see is that something beyond this. You're going to see how to cater to the executive so that you could get a quick approval in a quick turnaround. So that's what we'll be focusing on today. Next slide, please.
So we'll talk through the tips, but I really want you to make sure that you keep this foundational principle in the back of your mind, and it's a foundational principle in every one of the tips that we talk about. So let's talk about tip number 1. Abhishek?
Yeah, so the tip number 1 is you want to map what you want to achieve. Let's say you have a great idea that you want to achieve and get an approval on. So then you jot down what you want to do. So those are the next steps that we talk about in your homework that you do to go ahead and achieve that. So maybe that is something, for example, would be that you have a great idea that's going to save the cost, but how do you get the right approval for that? Or this might be something where you're reducing the time to implement or time to market, and how do you get that approval or buy-in from your executive team so that way you could get that rolling. So those are the things that you'd want to first start with. What do I want to achieve here? So that's kind of the mapping thing that we're talking about here. And this is a good time to, let's just take a minute and think about, if you have a pen and a paper, just start thinking about what you want to achieve. Just write it down or map it in your mind. And we'll just give a minute there for you to map that use case, and then we'll go from there.
And the takeaway here is you want to define the specific task. So it's like any goal, whether it's personal, this one, you want funding, you want resources, you want headcount, I want all of those things. I always say when you're starting, think pie in the sky. What is it what I want to achieve? What is the goal? Because if your goal is clear, then everything to get you to that goal becomes clear. If you don't have a clear goal of what you're going in to get, you're not going to get it. You're not going to achieve it. It's the same thing with personal goals. If you don't have a good, clear goal of where you want to go, that's whatever that may be, again, funding, prioritization. I think as humans, we tend to think of the constraints before we even think of the clear goal. So I want you to kind of push down those constraints for a second. You're going to need them and know them, what they are, but map out your goal first. Move on to technique number 2. Do your homework on executive personality.
Yeah, thank you. If you can click on the executive personality, let's go through the details there so that we could give our viewers the details. What you will hear today is that we're not talking about a complex flow chart or a metrics, etc. This is more knowing the person's personality and just catering to that. So this is what, based on my research that I've done, is typically there's like 6 personalities that people fall under. Either it's a controller and there's there's likes and dislikes. A controller obviously likes more authority and autonomy, but then hates the chaos and incompetence. And then the analytical is more about the data hungry person is more about accuracy up to the second, or maybe sometimes even the third decimal point, and then hates the ambiguity and the haste around it. The attention seeker is the one who is looking for their name to be recognized and told in front of people so that they could gain spotlight. And then if they're just pushed with an anonymity, that is something that they dislike. A support seeker, you will see, is more about trying to look for others to give them an assurance. Hey, what do you think about this? What are your thoughts? Or if they want to see what does the majority look like, and they don't like any conflicts, or usually if there's a conflict, they feel like there's not much confidence around that, and that's when they sort of go in that opposite direction. A logical thinker, you will see a lot of these folks from the engineering, IT, and all that. By the nature of the job they're built in, they would want to get a structure around it, a reason around it, and oftentimes you will see them saying, well, that doesn't logically make sense, etc. So they are more about the dot connectors, and then they don't like any extra drama, inconsistency, whatnot. So you'd have to put in that story way that logically flows to them. And then achiever is more about, they're more results oriented. So they are more focused on results. Let's just get the job done. And then they hate failures or stagnation in terms of, oh, where's this project? It's been 3 weeks, it's still staying there. These are things that they dislike. So these are the major personalities that typical human being is going to have. And then these are their likes and dislikes. So our objective here is to make sure that we identify that executive, what kind of personality they fall in, and then cater to their likes rather than their dislikes. So that way it's easier for you to get your approval. And then one pro tip, what I would add here is that you could counter me with a question saying that, well, this is the executive that I'm walking into a meeting for the very first time. I haven't spoken to them. I don't know their personality. How do I do that? One pro tip there would be to talk to your managers, talk to your directors, etc., or your VP to understand what personality they are, do that homework and get a view of it. So that way you could launch yourselves in that right direction. And then from here, take a minute to go through that exercise and think about executive in your mind, and then think about what personality they fall under, and then start putting together that story structure with the likes that better to understand that this person is controller, but also at the same time wants to get reassurance as a support seeker. In that case, what do you tell them is, hey, you're the final decision maker, and then etc. But then you'd give them that balance behind and say that there's this, we went over already this at a director level, a VP level, and all these 10 individuals who are part of the stakeholder process have already been on board and approve it and are in sync with that. So that's when you are catering to that, to their major as well as the minor personality, and your chances of getting the approval are going to be higher.
And sometimes you might even have multiple executives that you need to get approval for something. It may not just be one. This is really a guide to make sure to include the elements of the types of things that they're looking for. So it may be that your pitch might have to have multiple elements from this chart so that you can cater to multiple personality types depending on what forum you're pitching in. All right, and the exercise for that one, and I'm going to kind of combine it with tip number 3, but think through the story. Start painting your story. So rewrite the one sentence and start writing maybe one sentence pitch to match an executive style. Maybe if you want to try writing your pitch for 2, try just one sentence just for practice so that you can practice the model a little bit. But this is really, really helpful, what they don't like, so you can cater to what they love and what they hate. I love this chart. Thank you, Abhishek. So awesome.
So in a corporate setup where you will see people distributing themselves as servant leader, this, that, but you never know, they might also be an attention seeker. They're not going to come out and say that we are an attention seeker, we like the spotlight, but being around them, like I said initially, that let's say if you're going in that meeting and going to interact with this personality for the first time, but people around them, like let's say at a VP or director level, might have already interacted with them. So that's part of your homework to kind of understand, and they might be the ones telling you, hey, this individual is like kind of like they like attention, so and etc. So that's kind of the game behind that. So if you're able to look into that and cater to that, you could say, let's say, for example, Mr. John, oh, you did a great job last time you presented this at a bigger conference, and I was very much into it, etc. And then you sort of cater to their requirement, and that's how you can take off from there. But I understand in a corporate setup, it's more subtle. No one's going to come out and say that, hey, I'm an attention seeker. Where's the spotlight on me?
But you want to cater to the wins. So one other example in my experience, when you're trying to put the win together for the attention seeker, like one of the things that I did was there was a particular award for quality that we could submit for and win if we did a certain project and we did it well. So I had thrown that into my pitch. Like we could submit this even for so-and-so recognition of the Illinois quality, like, well, it was like a quality award basically, and it would give us recognition. They loved that as part of the pitch. I saw the eyes go up. So those are the types of things you can kind of throw into your pitch to maximize the attention seeker.
That's great. Thank you both. That's really helpful. I like that.
All right, because we're running low on time. See how fast time goes. Okay, so tip number 3, providing options. So this one, obviously, think about your story. As Abhishek talked about, paint the story according to the executives you're trying to get approval for. And also think about, if I go in there and there's pushback, because there could be, right? What is the minimal viable option? And what is the impact? I used this model a lot with portfolio because obviously cost was always top of mind. So I always made sure that when we went in, we also gave options. So if I couldn't get my pie in the sky, which was my goal going in there, this is what I want to get, this is what I want to achieve. I did all my homework and tailored it to the personality of the leader. What is the then lower cost option? What is the moderate cost option? And what is the impact of choosing that versus a different one? So one very concrete example was a particular project was very, very expensive, but it would operationally cost a lot less over the long term because we were eliminating 5 other costs that we would no longer need by implementing this one system. So those are the types of things you want to think about. Lots of times when you put options, the controller especially feels like they have choices, and so do the executives. So make sure you have these ready to go if you can when you make your pitch. And then Abhishek, I will let you take tip number 4.
Yeah. Thank you, Angelica. So the tip number 4 is more of like a piggyback on the previous tips and the notions we spoke about. Before you walk into this executive level meeting, you want to sort of do a pre-meeting or a pre-planning with already the other stakeholders and the influencers, such as your directors or VPs or senior VPs, etc. And then you want to socialize that and get a general view about it and get everyone on board. Because what you want to do is, like, when you go to that executive level meeting, you want everyone to be on your side, everyone to be in chorus with you. And so that way, I'll give my own example, is like when you walk into executive meeting, they sort of sniff through what confidence level it is on the ground. And the more confident you are in terms of presenting your idea and everyone gets around you and says, yes, that's a great idea to begin with, that's what they're looking for. And if you're going to see some immediate pushback from another VP, etc., I mean, that's not good conversation to proceed further. Then the executive is going to just take a pause and say, well, we got to just address their question first, and then we'll get back at this. We might not be able to approve it immediately, etc. So that's why it's more important to pre-align your strategy with the key influencers and socialize and get them on board. And that's part of the tip 4 here.
And I want to be respectful of people's time. So we have one more tip that we want to go through, which is the Rasky. It's a very standardized tool. Many of you may have heard of it. Tip number 4, the meeting before the meeting. You're going to get so much feedback, like Abhishek said. Don't skip this step. It's absolutely key and important so that you're going into the meeting with the support that you need. So think about, as the exercise, a couple of people that you need to pre-align with before you go into anything. And then finally, let's talk about tip number 5, the Rasky. This is really, really good, a well-rounded piece to go into any ask for. I love this step because, so go ahead and tell us a little bit about this framework.
Yeah, thank you, Angelica. So this comes out of my real life experience is that you get a sign off and then everyone agrees on that, but then who's gonna, usually in a corporate setup, you're gonna have multiple teams involved and the timeline is usually structured around it with deliverables, etc. But then who's gonna do what, right? Is it gonna be a supportive role or just informed or consulted, accountable, responsible? So getting that defined on a piece of paper clearly, who's gonna be responsible for what particular tasks, or even to a subtask level at later, but initially, at least at a high level, who's going to be responsible for that? Doesn't have to be, again, an individual at that point. It could just be the team that would be doing that, and who's going to be the accountable individual or the team, and then the supportive team is going to be more like a plug and play. For example, you'd have finance come in between, or IT come in between, or HR, etc. And then you'd later on consult the engineering team, the field team, operations, etc. But at the same time, you'd want to keep a weekly list of who needs to be informed at that executive level as well. So having all this structured together is going to make it easier for you to begin with and start that groundwork in a solid manner. And then when you get a PM on this, it is also going to give them a better view and a visibility into who's doing what. And you're going to make their job a lot easier that they could take this and run with it.
Thank you, Abhishek. So think about the Rasky, think about your idea and who would be, especially your accountable, so that you go into the meeting knowing who's going to be accountable for the outcomes from day one. So hopefully we've given you some really, really good tips today on how you can go in and get that approved. It takes a lot of work, it takes a lot of homework, and it takes a lot of planning, but hopefully that's a winning formula for everyone. And I just want to do some shameless plugging. So thank you for those who've stayed a little bit extra. There's some upcoming workshops. I'm actually delivering the free benefits realization workshop in March. If you haven't already registered for that, please do. Also, how to lead AI. If you'd like, we are offering some discounts to this one as well. So feel free to email support@Brightside Success. We'd be happy to give you a little break on that one as well. And then finally, if you'd like to connect with us, here's our information if you haven't already, and some additional information and links that will be sent to you after the session as well. Thank you so much for joining us. Hopefully we've given you some really good tips and takeaways from today's workshop.